Welcome, everyone, to the Leadership in Quarters podcast, the interview series where leaders come to share their perspectives on different leadership topics. I'm Josh Seldin, and today's guest is Katherine Robinette. Katherine Robinette is a leadership strategist who helps make work less work. For more than 30 years, she's helped leaders and teams rethink how work happens so people can focus on what matters most. Known for her insight and humor, she blends systems thinking with emotionally intelligent leadership to create more human and effective workplaces. So welcome, Katherine.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, so happy to have you here. So I would love to talk about the core dimensions of leadership. I hear that you are somewhat of an expert on that topic, and I am so thankful that you're here to share that with everybody else who's listening. So if we could jump right in and have you describe and discuss what the core dimensions of leadership is.
Core dimensions of leadership are like a guidebook for leaders. There are 4 elements: mindset, which is like mission and vision. It's your North Star, the thing that you may or may not achieve in your lifetime, but it's the why do we work? Why are we in business? Method, which is how we do the work, both operationally and ethically. What will we tolerate? What will we not tolerate? Metrics, which are measurements of progress versus just the outcome. So, not necessarily the financial or the sales goals, but how do we know this is working? How do we know we are on the right path? And then mood, which is not only the emotional state of the leaders and the rest of the staff, but also what is the experience of working here? What do we want people to say about working here? What do we
Mhm.
want people's experience with the company to be like so that you can intentionally design your culture versus letting it happen incidentally?
So many leaders just hope that the culture just happens, and hope's not a plan. And so just crossing your fingers and hoping people enjoy coming to work and hoping they're ready to jump in Monday morning after a weekend just never seems to work out. I love that mood part.
Yeah, and the culture will happen. They
Yeah,
don't have to hope that the culture will happen. The culture will happen. What they're hoping for is the desired culture, and that you have to design.
exactly. It takes that effort. You mentioned at the very beginning the first dimension with mindset and having that be the North Star. In your opinion, do you see that shift over time? Because when I first think of North Star, I think of my constant. That North Star is always there. I'm always going to be going for it. But you mentioned something in your description. It's a North Star that people go towards that they may not ever achieve. Does that ever stop them from going towards that North Star and having them pick a different star?
Yeah, of course. The wonderful thing about the core dimensions is that they are adaptive. So if the entire leadership is like, hey, our original North Star is no longer relevant, we have solved hunger. We don't need to exist
Yay!
anymore for that purpose. We have solved
Right.
world hunger. Then, yeah, the North Star would shift to something else. What I love about using the term North Star, though, is that it is not the whim of the year, or it's not the direction of the month, the flavor of the month.
Flavor of the week.
Yeah. If you think of it from a founder mentality, it becomes something that the founder deeply believed in, was something that they desperately wanted to deal with, either a
Mm.
problem to solve or something amazing that they wanted to make sure was put out into the world. And now the founder's gone. So this is the thing that they had in their head that they were super passionate about, codified, documented.
And this is so critically important. And I feel like a lot of leaders and a lot of leadership teams discount this and push it by the side as this vision and this mindset and this North Star. Because if you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. Maybe you get there by luck, like you said. Maybe the culture just happens. And if the culture just happens to be the one that you want, great. But there needs to be intentionality behind it to make you consistently successful at what you're doing. And so many leadership teams and groups and leaders don't have that vision. And it's so difficult to get everybody to rally behind you and get done what you're hoping to get done because you don't have something specific you're going towards.
Yeah, it affects everything. It affects every decision from what do you have in your office? Are you sustainably focused because your North Star is a sustainable goal or whatever? Then that
Right.
would affect the paper products that you purchase in your office. To
Yeah.
who do you hire? Who are you attracting? Because if you can't articulate, this is why we exist, this is what we are ultimately shooting for, how can you attract the people that you need or the resources that you want in your organization? It affects everything.
It really does. I can't imagine trying to have a conversation with a potential new hire or somebody and they say, "What are you about? What's your company about?" And you're like, "That's a great question."
Yeah, I think of the Hamilton line, if you stand for nothing, Burr, what will you fall for? It's pretty much the Gen Z hirees are all asking that question. Like, why
They
are we
are.
here? What are we doing? It's okay. We better have an answer for that.
That's right. And that connects so well to mood. And obviously, these have these connections between all the dimensions. I've even been on leadership teams where if I sit there and I have to ask the question, why are we doing this work? Or what is the purpose? Especially in the day and age where we are, where we're over capacity, we focus on productivity, we limit the number of people in the company. So we have had more work today than ever. And as I'm overloaded, I'm sitting and thinking, why am I doing this? What good is it doing? How is it moving the company forward? That completely impacts my mood and the culture of myself and my team.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And a lot of that overwhelm is a methods problem. It's
Right.
the system hasn't been designed to support either the type of work or the level of work or the processing of work that is what we have now. A lot
Right.
of the operating systems that we're functioning under are manufacturer era operating systems. That's where you get the terminology of we're all just cogs in the machine or we're all replaceable or whatever. And it's no, the best high functioning businesses today have lots and lots of specialists who are trying to work in a generalist's operating system. And that's overwhelming because they're now
Yes.
having to carry the weight of the system in addition to actually doing their actual work. So yeah, so paying attention to that, it's like, what is the experience like working here? Oh, my people are overloaded. That's not what I want. Dig, figure out,
Yes.
okay, what do we have in place that is causing that friction?
And listen. I think listening is so important as well because asking that question is great. And again, I can speak from experience where somebody asked me my opinion on something like a culture of how everything here is, how is it like to work? And I tell them the truth, and they're like, no, you misunderstand. It's not like that. It's like this. I'm like, why did you ask me in the first place?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But you have to
Yeah.
be willing to listen because then if you don't, you'll never fix it.
Yeah, and I tell people like don't ask the question if you're not going to do something with this because that will
Right.
erode trust faster than not ever asking the question and just being ignorant. People will tolerate your ignorance for a lot longer than I told you the truth and you still didn't do anything. Like that
Exactly.
immediately like I'm out of here. Bye.
Yes. Uh, for sure. One of my pet peeves there.
Yeah,
Um,
same.
yes, perfect. So while we're on the topic of being over capacity and possible burnout and all of these things, when the stress increases and stuff hits the fan and you are over capacity and you're burnt out and you don't know what else to do and you have all these four core dimensions to fall back on, are there any of the core dimensions that start to wane and fade as the stress becomes higher and the burnout starts happening? Or is it more of a situation where there are certain core dimensions that you start to really lean on to help support you and save you from that burnout?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Okay, so a couple of thoughts come to
Yeah.
mind. Metrics are probably the first thing to go by the wayside when
Hmm.
people get really stressed because they just want to finish. They just want to get to the end. And so the goal may change flavor.
Hmm.
We need to bring in X amount of money. So that becomes the goal versus we need to make sure that we win that particular client or
Right.
whatever, which then immediately leans into method. Do we need to win this much money no matter what? Or is how we're going about it still on the table? So I would say that's where the envelope gets strained. For reducing that burnout and overwhelm, mood and mindset are the balance. So mindset becomes the no, it's not at no matter what. If it doesn't serve the mission
Mm.
and the flavor of the mission of the North Star, then that is not an appropriate action to take or
Right.
decision to make. And if it decreases capacity or adds overwhelm to our people, mood, that is also an incorrect decision to make, the wrong direction to go. So you can lean in really heavily into mindset and mood as your kind of sideboards for, wait a minute, maybe we should just take a step back and really see what we're doing to our people. But yeah, I think your indicators are going to be, wait a minute, they're talking about the metrics and the methodology differently. I think that we're out of alignment on mindset and mood.
That makes a lot of sense, Catherine. And I want to first say I love the fact that you use flavor of the week, flavor of the month as a phrase because I use it all the time. I love it. And I think it ties to that mindset and ties to why I am just so supportive of your answer to that question because again, it's what we've all seen in person. And when everything becomes a priority, nothing's a priority. And that
Oh my gosh.
drives the overwhelm. And being able to stop and pause and reset to figure out what our vision is, what our mindset, our North Star is, and then say, okay, everything we're asking everybody to do and everything we ourselves are being asked to do, how does it serve that? And if the answer is it doesn't, then get it out of the way, at least for now, until we get back under control. And I feel like that is something that people are so afraid to do because they try to get everything done. But when you try to get everything done, you don't get anything done.
Yeah. So I had some nonprofit administration training. And in nonprofit administration, part of the deal of being a leader is to know when it's time to close the nonprofit. You are essentially, no matter what it is, whether it's service oriented or cultural oriented, at some point there will be no demand for whatever it is that you're providing. So your passion, your North Star, has an endpoint. So it's okay that the North Star shifts and changes and whatever. But if you don't even know what that is, how can you direct anything?
Right.
And knowing when to stop doing something because it is in direct conflict with that North Star is a leadership muscle. Saying no, this doesn't serve anymore is leadership.
No is such a bad word in leadership, isn't it? So many leaders are so afraid to say the word no. And it's like we have to create a movement to bring no back and normalize saying no because that is the only way you protect your energy, the energy of your teams, and then you protect that North Star. Because if you can't
Yeah.
say no to things that don't make sense, and granted, we shouldn't be difficult and say no to everything because we also need to figure out what we need to do to make everything move forward. But people today are just so afraid to say no.
Yeah, and that feeds right into overwhelm and burnout.
Right.
If people don't know that they can say no, they will say yes to everything that comes across their desk because they want to be
Right.
responsive or they're people pleasers or whatever the
Yeah.
psychology is that's going on there. You have to give them, no, these are the sideboards. It is okay to say no to anything that is not in this lane. It's fine.
Right.
In fact, we are counting on you to make all of those micro decisions so that we, the leadership, does not have to deal with it. They can't do that if they don't know where the sideboards are.
Exactly.
One of the best strategic planning sessions I ever had was once we figured out, okay, this is what we want to accomplish. Then for each one of their initiatives, we talked about, okay, what are you going to continue, but just tweak slightly so that it now gets you more progress,
Mhm.
metrics, gets you
Yep.
more progress towards that end goal. What are you going to start brand new? Because maybe it's a brand new initiative, you've never done it before,
Mhm.
which is where everybody tends to go with strategic planning. And
Yep.
what are you going to stop doing? Because it's either interfering with your ability to do this thing or it no longer serves. It's not relevant anymore. So eye-opening, such an incredibly liberating conversation to have at a strategic plan level. It was chef's kiss. Love it.
I love that activity. And I feel like everybody calls it something different. We call that the stop, start, continue activity.
Same.
And being able to do that, I think in multiple places, a lot of times, and how I was always taught was you do that as you enter a new organization. And if you move into a new organization, you want to know what people think they're doing well, what we need to stop doing that is just wasting time, and what we want to continue. But people never really triggered to do that like in the middle of your tenure with your organization because in an ideal world, you hit that mood, you build that culture where you don't need to do that activity for somebody to be like, hey, why are we working on this? Let's stop this and start this. But it's a good gut check, health check to make sure you're on the right path. But we only ever really trigger to do that at the beginning of something instead of during the journey.
Yeah. And that can be part of your culture now. If you say,
Right.
oh, wait, the experience here is we actually reevaluate when something is still relevant or not, then okay, maybe it's ritualized as part of your strategic planning process, or maybe, as you suggest, they just bring it up. Both of those are equally valid, but that's a culture choice. That's an intentional, hey, this is something that we think is valuable. We want people to tell us when we're wasting resources or when they think that we're wasting resources and make the case. Beautiful. Yes, that's mood.
Yes. And this is going to be a little bit of my opinion in this question, but I think that occasionally when leadership shows up, it is not always warmly welcomed with open arms. Usually leaderships
What?
bring, I know, shocking, right? Leaders sometimes, maybe occasionally bring complexity and bring things that are viewed as extra work. How can a leader channel these core dimensions and help to the organization as opposed to a hindrance or a barrier or somebody bearing the gift of more work and more complexity?
I'm having all of the different boss types, the seagull that comes in and poops on everything and then leaves and whatever. Yeah, so there are several things at play there. One is the leader who rose up through the ranks and is most comfortable doing, not deciding. It's the Peter principle. They got promoted to the place where they are least comfortable, which is I am no longer a doer, I am now a leader. And they don't know
Right.
how to do that. And we are historically in America really bad about training our leaders about that transition.
Right.
One of the things about these core dimensions is that you now have something written down that you can hand to them and say, you're a leader now. Part of our methodology is you are no longer a doer, you are a strategic thinker. And part of your job is to think through the obstacles for your people because you used to be there, you know what the obstacles are, and to remove those obstacles or to teach them how to remove those obstacles. If you are an obstacle, here's how we deal with that. And that becomes part of the methodology of what it means to be a leader in this company. The other piece about that is it may be a generational thing, but it could also be they were taught a leadership style that is not collaborative in nature, that does not allow for people asking questions or people assuming some of the decision-making authority for lower risk, lower level decision.
Mhm.
And again, that's a leadership training or development issue that
Right.
you can fix if you have these core dimensions written out. So you can actually write out part of our methodology is budgetary authority up to X can be pushed down to managers or whatever,
Mhm.
regional managers, and that's codified. So they can have as part of the system the controls in place that allow a leader to step out and be more strategic without having to get into the day-to-day operations. One of the things that's super empowering for any leader is to have something that operates on a long-term trajectory level and on a day-to-day functionality level. Because every manager, every leader is going to face roughly the same challenges over time. So if you have a structure in place that can address both of those extremes, you've eliminated about 90% of the bottleneck overwhelm that those individuals feel because they feel like they're having to reinvent leadership every single time they bump into that. No, you don't. People have figured this out before. They just don't write it down. It lives in somebody's head. Someone has figured this out in the organization. Someone has figured out personnel issues. Someone has figured out motivation. Write it down. That's trainable, teachable stuff. Hand it to your incoming leaders or to your newly promoted managers and say, I want you to read this and then let's talk about it once a week until, you feel comfortable, until you can look at a cheat sheet and go, oh yeah, this is one of those. And I
Right.
should probably try one of these five things.
It is so interesting you bring that up because I actually just had a conversation a few weeks ago with somebody about a similar topic where you take somebody who is the top executor and move them into a people leader role. And it does not always work out because just because you're a top technical expert doesn't mean you're a good people leader. How do leadership teams and organizations trigger on the fact that they do not have sufficient systems in place to support people like that? And instead of the push them in the river and hope they learn how to swim mentality, we then fall back on the method and say, okay, what is the health of our systems? And if it's not good, what do we do about it?
Yeah, I think at this point it's probably safe to say the system is at fault and it's not the people. But the difficulty is the symptoms look the same: burnout, overwhelm. I tell people you want to look for the extremes. When a star performer says, "This is it, I'm done, I can't do this anymore," that's a system that is crying out for some assistance. And Josh, I don't know about you, but most of the leaders that I talk to are terrified of the idea of restructuring their system. They think it means burn everything down and start over. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying design what you want. The system will course correct. Because the systems I'm talking about are not your accounting system. They're not your database system. They're not your CRM. They're not the enterprise software. It's operational in nature. It's people-led systems, decision making, reward and recognition, expectations about work. All of those are methods, can be methods that you can write down and transfer literally on paper to somebody else's brain. But we don't think about them that way. We think about them as they just need more people management training. Yeah, maybe, but also they don't know where the sideboards are in what's allowed and what's not allowed and what do we want? What do we actually want? That's not burning it all down. That's just like stating an intent.
Right. It's intentional clarity that is
Yeah.
needed in the system. And you're right. People don't think about that. People don't think about method. And I bring this up so often. So again, my background's in manufacturing, and a lot of times we like to use, there's a tool called the 5 Why tool, where the way it was explained to me is my kids in the car. Every time I'm like, hey, we're going here. Why? Why? You keep asking why, just like a little kid to get to root cause. And we're so good doing that for technical issues, but not for people issues, because it's so much easier for us to say, this person is not executing well. It's their fault. They are a bad people leader because of them, and not asking that question, that why, getting the core of why they are executing or not executing the way they are. Understanding then, as you said, it's a method or a system issue instead of a people issue. It may be a people issue. I'm not saying it's never a people issue, but it's so much easier to jump to it being a people issue.
Yeah, because it's easier to say if I just pull out that one knot out of
Right.
this rope, the rope will reseal and we'll be fine. It's like you realize you just cut out a knot out of a rope. Like that is not fine.
No,
That's a structural problem.
exactly. That's not how ropes work.
Yeah, yeah. No, I understand it's braided
Yeah.
and you've got two other ropes there, but yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting how all that works, and sadly how consistent that is across different industries, as we can tell based on our conversation right here.
Yeah. Yeah, my background is AEC, architects, engineers, construction. So
Oh, see that?
very similar to manufacturing.
Yeah, exactly. I do want to touch on metrics because I think, what we've talked so far between mood, mindset, and method very easily tie in together in my mind. Metrics, I'm interested to see what your opinion on metrics are and how it fits with all this, because the first thing I think of with metrics is whether we're looking at leading measures or lagging measures, and looking at in process versus output, and how we get analysis paralysis and data blind to things because we rely so heavily on metrics and not those other three dimensions we've already talked about. What's the best way to use metrics in all of this?
Yeah, metrics are in progress. So, yes, you absolutely have to have the ultimate outcome. What does success look like? What do
Right.
we want this to be when it's all finished? But also, what do we want this to be as we go along? What are the milestones within this that will tell us we are making progress? And it's important for reasons that you might not think about. Most of us are fine doing implementation for short-term goals. We can maintain our own momentum if you need this in 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 3 months. You get much beyond 3 months, and we think, oh, there's plenty of time.
Right.
Any project that needs more than 3 months to implement means it's complex and it
Right.
has multiple steps and it probably has multiple stakeholders. And And it needs
Mhm.
resources. There are micro decisions that need to be made along the way and course correcting, and we're not entirely sure. I can only see 4 steps ahead, so we may have to make a course correction, blah, blah, blah. But you know that going in, why not build in those milestones? Hey, we've made progress to the first milestone. This is our first major decision. We've decided X. Let's celebrate that. It does multiple things. It keeps giving you dopamine hits, so it builds on its own momentum. It builds on its own success. And it rewards the team for being a team. Because if the only metric is the end goal and achieving the whatever it was, the brass ring, whoever had their hand on the brass ring gets all the credit.
Mhm.
When you have metrics that are in progress metrics, then whoever is touching those milestones gets credit. And as we all know, it takes more than one person to win a client. It takes more
Right.
than one person to get a job done. But their expertise is not the brass ring, their expertise is earlier in the process. And so they go unrewarded, unrecognized. Why? Why not recognize them at the point, at the milestone where their work was the heavy lift? Now you're giving them a reason to develop their expertise at that moment for that thing. They may never become a people manager. They may be the expert at whatever that early piece was in the project, and they do it for everybody across the organization. And they're the master of it. And they feel good about it because they know it's part of the process, it's part of the reward system, it's part of the recognition. They get the dopamine hit, like all the things. All the things. And hey, guess what? Everybody in the company now knows how that project gets done. It's got
Right.
5 steps. These are the steps. Is the go-to for step one. This other person's the go-to for step two. So when I'm doing my project as a brand new project manager hired in the company, I already know who to talk to because they are visible in the company.
Right. That is perfect. As somebody who works on long-term projects a lot, that is so important because, as you said, you work on something that's 2 years out, and having that as your only place for rewards and recognition, appreciation, anything like that is so draining to the team. And you bring this full circle, I feel like, for the conversation where you make people feel appreciated. You have these touch points where you can make them proud of the work they've done. That will help with that mood. That will help with the burnout because it gives them, like you said, that dopamine hit to keep going. So I think for me, that is a great place for us to really end on. Obviously, I'd like to open it up one more time for anything additional that you'd like to share with everybody before we wrap up. But I think that was a great last point with those dimensions.
I think I just want to reiterate that this isn't about burning everything down and starting over. That this is really, hey, take a soft look at where the friction points are and give yourself permission to say, this is not a people problem. This is probably a systems problem. What would change if we codified our mindset, documented our methodology, documented or adapted our metrics to be in progress metrics in addition to outcome metrics, and really strategized how we want working here to feel? What would change?
It's a great question to end on. I love that. Hopefully, it gives everybody time to sit and reflect because I don't think we do that enough. And so, great question to sit and reflect on. To remind everybody, it was the 4 core dimensions of leadership, as Katherine just reiterated and summarized for us. Any additional questions that you may have for Katherine, you can reach out to her. I want to remind everybody it's Katherine Robinette. I'll have her information on the posting and the YouTube page and the video that we have. And you can reach out to her. If for whatever reason you can't get a hold of her, get a hold of me. I will get you two together. But I can say she is very reachable and flexible with being able to come on the show and has been a great partner with all this. So I'm sure she'd love to hear from you. You can catch this episode on all of our podcast platforms that we have, either the audio version there or you can see the video on YouTube. You can subscribe to my Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Lead in Quarters. And you can email me with any questions that you may have, any ideas for future episodes, or if you're interested in being a guest at leadinquarters@gmail.com. But Katherine, I do want to thank you again. It's one of those things I laugh and I made a joke about it during our episode here, but these core dimensions go beyond specific organizations and work types and how two of us, yeah, I think manufacturing, architecture, and engineering and everything is similar, but knowing that we can have this conversation and you can talk to somebody else in a different type of work, these things are constants. And so for you to be able to bring something like that to the table here that some people can watch and take away and we know can directly apply to their area of ownership and their work is truly astounding. So I really appreciate everything that you've brought.
Wow, that's wonderful to hear. Thank you so much, Josh.